What up, everybody? What up, CT? You know what today is? What day is today? You know what day today
is today?
It's Hump Day! And Mark Max back with another episode of The Hump, and I'm welcoming in my man CT Falk, calling in from Canada. This is episode 8. Welcome, everybody. For those who catch it on the replay or whatever, I invited this guy, CT Falk, here. One of the things that drew me to you, CT, was, again, we've been talking a lot about this online. A lot of people have been seeing kind of a change in the SDR, BDR role. Maybe it's more of a hybrid role. Maybe it's a full cycle, right? And so I was 25 years full cycle sales, and I came into this space, in the tech sales space, and had to get used to this kind of SDR AE thing, and then everyone's just quietly talking about how they're changing the role a little bit and trying to mature the role a little bit. And yet I saw your post. You're looking for flat out. You just said full cycle sales rep, and that just kind of took me back. And I sort of wanted to get you on here to pick your brain a little bit about how you think that's going to give you an advantage, and potentially in what are the scenarios that we could discuss that really a full cycle sales rep would be the most advantageous model. And so welcome to the show. This is my second iteration. SDR Insider is a community mostly to just help SDRs level up, get them the information that they need. I used to host a show called Mac and Zach in the morning from SDR Insider, and my man Zach Bauer, he and I just stopped doing that. He had to change jobs. He had Thursday mornings no longer open. Not that we couldn't do it again, but I came back this year with the Hump because I was doing a Wednesday night kind of like 15-minute thing, and I said, dang, I can't just I was always going over 17 minutes and 20 minutes. I was like, I'm gonna do a whole show. So and we're into the 8th episode, and I've had some of your people that on the show in the last few weeks, but I want to give you a couple of minutes to tell the audience who you are, what you're all about, where you come from, family, where you live, those kinds of things.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me. We had a couple good exchanges there, and it's always nice running into people who know what the old school full cycle looked like. So, you don't have to explain things too in depth. But I know CT Falk, been around, been in sales since I was a teenager. Actually, started out in call centers, like back when you had like a actual handset and 2 ashtrays and 4 packs of cigarettes on the desk.
Absolutely. When they let you actually smoke in the building,
and you smoked, and the windows were closed, and so they had a fan blowing it right back at you. Times have changed now. But that's kind of where I started out in sales, and then I tried to go a technical route, getting into the engineering world. Decided it was definitely not going to be for me, so I just kept with the business end of it. Kind of leveraged a lot of that, technical engineering experience to grow the career, and by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was already a business development manager, but back when BD was full cycle. So kind of started out there and then grew up through the ranks. Did a lot of operations within North America. So I'm based out of Canada, as you mentioned. Home base is Calgary, Alberta, but I get around a lot. I mean, I'm on the East Coast. I'm in the US. We're doing a lot with companies in the Middle East and Asia right now as well, and Europe. So nowhere feels like home anymore these days.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know why I had that on the screen. That's actually what the show's kind of about, what it takes to get over the hump. But no, thanks for that introduction, man. I think it was less than 2 minutes, as a matter of fact. I got to get that clock up there like my girl Jessie has. By the way, Jessie Lizak, if you don't know her, she runs a show. It's a live event. It's on tonight, 9 p.m. So she's late night. I'm a little early. Anyways, yeah. So we kind of try to promote each other's.
This is the pre-drinking episode.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that because there used to be a very infamous show called Thursday Night Sales. That drew, you know, at one point I think Scott Leese was trying to like raise the bar and get like he said he would give somebody $500 or $5,000 or something if he could get 500 people to the show. The night of the show, and he had to get 500 people, and then everybody was entered into like you know, he would give you $5,000, and I'm like,
that's pretty sick.
That's pretty cool. I was like, yo, and I don't think we ever made it. I think he gave it away at some point, whatever the biggest one was. But either way, so Thursday Night Sales. What was interesting about that, if people remember, we're around back then, there was actually a pre-show and an after hours, right?
Nice.
What happened was it was an after hours, and then I don't know, I sort of there was a group of us that all of a sudden there was like a happy hour before it. You know? And so, you know, you'd end up going over there. It's like, it was so weird because you'd have this kind of exchange on like maybe 13 or 14 people, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's 8 o'clock, whatever that show started, and you're like, do we go over there? Do we stay here? And everyone's like, oh, we'll go over there. I'll see you over there. And it was like, here we're talking with each other, and there we're just listening to Scott and what's the name talk, which was annoying.
It's like, who am I talking at right now?
Anyways, I love the live events. I think live shows like this, live interaction, you know, is the best thing. Like I grew up, we didn't have this when in early business development. We didn't have these mediums, so like everything to me was live. I coached live. I had a chalkboard and everything, you know, like whiteboard. Oh, I think it was a chalkboard actually.
Yeah.
You know, projector, microfiche, baby. You know.
Yeah.
Like with the glass top and the
pull your slides out and put them in. Yeah.
You know, like, you know, I was given a phone book one time in one of my jobs. You know, like literally, I ran a $6 million sales team focused on the financial vertical in downtown Manhattan prior to 9/11, and on index cards was our CRM, like literally 5x7 size like customized index cards, and we'd have like step ups on the desk to like manage the urgency of them, you know, like first level is really urgent, the top level, it's not so, you know, Glengarry's in the middle, right, kind of deal.
You got your inbox, your outbox, your stuff you need to do next week box.
Oh my God, it was like you didn't have you know, spam email and stuff like that, so it was quite different. You obviously maybe remember some of that, but so what really drew me to you again, and we'll get into it, is kind of like when I came into this industry, like I was always full cycle, and so I was like, SDR, what is that? Right? And you know what's so interesting, like as I talk with people who are trying to enter into this space, one of their biggest challenges people always talk about is the language, right? And the way tech sales people or tech people describe certain things is a lot of acronyms and what have you, right? And I tell people, I say, listen, don't think it's foreign, right? It's not. You probably know what they're talking about, but you probably actually use all of the words the acronym and never realized it. You probably said, what's your annual, you know, your average contract value, or what's your how much is it, or maybe it's phrased in you know, like I used to work for Sherwin-Williams, so maybe there it's, you know, how much is the invoice, you know,
what's your billables usually,
you know. And so I think that's the biggest issue in some cases, because people talk at candidates, at people, like if you don't know what ACV and TAM is and all these other things, and it's like don't fear it, because look, I speaking of Scott Leese, I had a conversation at one time. He said, because I had like I was maybe I came off a little arrogant to him, and he said, "Oh well, 27 years of sales at the time isn't 27 years of SaaS sales, tech sales." And I said,
"Yeah,
what?
Sure.
Are you saying that I can't do this company?
Yeah.
I can't build a business in SaaS?" I'm like, fuck that, right? And so I started actually doing live cold calling on the Discord channel, and this guy found me there, and he's like, "I want to hire you." I made like 2 phone calls, and I set a meeting, and I'm like, "What? This is not hard."
Not hard.
And so it's like the model didn't really make a difference, right? It was just like the top of funnel sales, it's this first touch. I like to try to get people to stop calling it cold calling and just call it first touch, because it's the first touch. It doesn't have to be cold. Why don't you describe it as it is? So I was always full cycle, and so I had to get used to this kind of like, what is this SDR AE thing, right? And it took me a minute, right? I talked with a lot of different people, and I realized, okay, well, it's a volume thing, really, right? And it's like, how many opportunities can we put in the pipeline? Forget about how much we can handle even on the customer support side, but how much can we put in the pipeline? And I never worked in a business that was able to structure it that way, whether they knew to structure it that way or not. Maybe they're trying those kinds of things now, but it was always like a situation of, you couldn't do that. You couldn't have you didn't have so much time for new business. You were always managing other business. Like I literally was like doing collection calls.
Yeah. Hey, you got an invoice. It's 65 days right now.
Like that shouldn't be something like the same person who's selling the initial part of the job is doing, but that's what we did. That's what full cycle was, and
yeah,
I mean, that's not what it was. I shouldn't be doing collection calls. It just happened. I had to go see the guy because he owed us $20,000.
Yeah.
He was 6 months past due, and I'm like, you better give me the money. But it was always something that you were so involved with. So it was always a volume thing, right?
Yeah.
And the full cycle piece of it, like it's just lost in this industry. Like they don't get it, or they don't really understand where it could fit in. So love to get your perspective a little bit on how you kind of see it and why you are looking for full cycle versus, maybe specialty roles like this.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Like, so I'm going back. So the SDR model is essentially, 1980s, 1990s telemarketing. That's all it is. It's the same thing. They're just using technology now. And it's not to discredit it. It's just what they did to try to get a message out there to a large swath of people. But what a lot of companies don't see, especially today, or if they've come up in the last 5 years, they don't have that experience from 15, 20 years ago, how things worked. They see the SDR model and they're like, oh, this is great. And they structure their entire organization around that. The problem is it's finite, right? As you start to cover, a large percentage of your TAM with that first touch, things have to get a little bit more sophisticated. And the way they're training and onboarding SDRs now doesn't allow them to continue to do that. Some companies hit it really well, some don't, right? Now, when you look at a SaaS where you've got a $300 a month contract that you're going to sign with somebody, someone calls them up, sends them to the next meeting. Fair enough. They're trying to move people through quickly. There's no relationship required. But when you get into products where you have repeat sales with clients, or you have anything where there's an upsell, the full cycle really plays a better role, because you can use other people in the support structure instead of an SDR. You can use your customer service team as a function of that to take some of the workload off of the sales rep, so that they're actually able to go out there and continually dig into that business. Right. So, I mean, if you've got a one and done sale, sure. I mean, the SDR model works really well. If you've got to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, you can do that. I mean, even 15, 20 years ago, reps would tag in, the admins, for example. Like I remember going to our admin team and saying, hey, listen, things are pretty slow. I got this list. Here it is. You go send out the cold faxes. You go call all these numbers. Cold fax. Use cold fax stuff out to people.
Be able to do that.
Yeah, it was cool.
The only problem, what stopped that was the Chinese restaurants and all the restaurants that started doing that, and that's what crushed it for like regular salespeople.
but any full cycle sales guy, if there's anybody watching, comment on this. Any full cycle guy that worked in an office had that Chinese restaurant menu pinned on his cubicle or in his office and ordered that thing at least once or twice a month. Everybody
a week.
It was constant. You go through, you pool resources. Okay, guys, it's $15 a dish. Yeah. Let's get 20, 30 of them, and everybody will eat. But
that's so true.
They figured that out, right? And that became a marketing channel for them that worked really well, and it was smart of them. But we wouldn't really train these people, like the admins. They knew what we did, so they had an understanding. They were involved in a lot of the process. They knew the accounts because they were doing a lot of the accounts receivable work as well. And they would just call out and be like, "Hey, Bob, listen, I got a guy here. He wants us to come and meet you. Is it possible he could drive over and have a little sit down with you?" "Yeah, I've got some time next week." "Okay, perfect. I'll book you in." And it was, a little bit more orchestration than you need now with technology, but you would do that. But it wasn't like very few professional businesses, even the early stage technology companies, didn't adopt it. It was like, no, we'll keep an account manager role, and then maybe we'll have like a central BD person who's out there continually doing outbound. But also then when you started in inside sales, which is customer service or customer support, right? That's where you got all your training. You knew what your company did. You knew the inner workings. You knew what the external. Adam Mendrovic actually talks about this a lot too. So him and we got a really good relationship because we're on a similar, mindset. Yeah. But basically you would come in and you would learn, like, this is how I process an order. This is how the credit situation works. Yeah. This is how legal works, right? This is how I put in a project management request. And you understand all that. Then you'd get graduated to an outside sales position, which was typically the account management, right? And then you already knew how everything worked from an internal process. You knew the products inside and out. Then when you went to see clients, it was basically just develop those interpersonal skills. And then you had all the technicals already behind you, So
exactly. Even in 2002, I joined a company called Sherwin-Williams, right? Paint company. And the first 2-3 weeks I spent in the store, a store, in the office, behind a computer that had the big back, TV screen. And it was like I had these binders of data of like information and teaching me about paint and applications and problems and everything really across the board. You had to learn products, you had to learn problems, you had to learn all these things, right? So you learned all that. And at the same time as doing that, I would then like ride with one of because the role is really an outside rep, right? But you'd ride with the rep. Like I happen to be in Manhattan, so I'd ride with the east side rep. I was the west side rep. And there was like in the store though, like part of that, like reading those books, I was really autonomous, but then like I had to spend time with the store manager, like, or the store employee ringing up sales and like just watching how, those are more consumers and I was more of like the contractor business, but it was just like taking calls, learning about, like just being in the job, like even if you didn't know everything, just put the guy on hold, and just ask somebody. But like you just did it, and I did it for like weeks, and then all of a sudden, like after 6 weeks or so, whatever, and I wrote I guess rode along with the other rep. Then eventually I went out on my own, and when I went out on my own, what was interesting there was that you had a base of business. Right, there was already a contractors they'll keep coming back, so there was a base of business to work. So you can then go to existing customers where you didn't have to necessarily pitch them on the product. They're already using the product, right? And so that's great, but they're also using other competitors' products because all painters do that, right? And so you would have to differentiate yourself, and I'd ask questions. I'd go to the job site, I'd put on whites and like paint it with them and get understand what it does, and all that kind of, hear their complaints.
Do the touch test, taste it.
Taste test. I don't know about that. Maybe with Harmony, which had 0 VLC, but like it was all about, even though it was a commodity product, it was just about like, being able to understand like the product and the customer at the same time. That when you then, because 20% of your business had to be new, when you go out to get the new business, how do you talk to those guys? Because now, you've been with the other contractor, you hear his words, you understand what it means, this means, that means, and then you go over there. And so that was the difference. It was like 60-70% of growing the existing business, maintaining existing business, and then like the net new was just a smaller component. And I think what like the SDR AE model essentially is allowing for is that you can constantly just have this top of funnel going at 100%, whether, and then because you have that middle layer that's just trying to close the sale, and then you have customer success and support that handles all the rest of it afterwards, and in some cases lands and expands. See, that I don't get. I don't understand why that goes back to like maybe an account manager. Yeah, so that's why full cycle to me is like you get to learn that customer. And in this kind of sense, maybe not with contractors at Sherwin-Williams, but like in businesses that are using software or whatever it is, it's like you now have a way. Now you can spend time really understanding how that product is affecting their business. And then if it's a big business that you can expand into other departments, sure. Or if you have partners, that's the way I look at it. Like when you're in a customer today, are you like, I don't know about you, but like I'm always just about, hopefully getting to the point where they're telling me everything that's going on their plate, whether it's something I solve or not. And today if you can get to that point in the conversation with an existing customer, then it just reveals things to you that just allows you to capitalize. See, that's why you don't need as much in the top of funnel, because you're going to close more of that top of funnel.
Way more.
Your top of funnel is going to be referrals, but it's also going to be just because you're working closely with the customer and understanding it. So it's like this, right? The first 30 days of any engagement we do at our agency is sitting down with the existing customers. Like I just reviewed a video my boss sent me. We have a new customer, and he just sat down with another one of their clients. And what we do is we do like, hey, pay me a picture before, pay me a picture after, right? And they just talk, right? And they tell you why they hired X company that we're working for. And we're doing top of funnel. Now you mentioned that earlier too. It's like you're going to have somebody just dedicated to maybe continuing to do cold outbound. It should be outsourced. I'm biased.
Well, I mean, if people do their homework right when they start a business or when they're growing the business, right, and they bring in the right people and they have the right advisors and they got the right structure, like the SDR thing is like how finite is this, right? Is this something that we can cover in, let's say you've got a really highly specialized tool that only 100 companies globally are going to be able to use. Okay. Your SDR window is, a year, right? That's all you're going to need them for. So there's no sense in hiring this big team, right? That's the kind of people that should outsource it. It's like, look, go cover ground, bring back information, figure out what you want. There's a lot of good cold callers out there. Jennifer Frost, for example.
I was about to say she just writes outsourced cold calling.
She's cold. This is what she does, and she's good at it, right? But that's the kind of person you bring on when you need that. It's like, look, we need to cover a lot of ground over 5 months to reach this goal, right? But have the process after that and explain people what the process is. You know what I mean? So you're not hiring 20 SDRs, laying off 20 SDRs, hiring 4 more because you didn't manage it properly, right? Hiring 6 more, then laying 3 off the next week. Like there's a lot of planning and process and procedures that need to go into it that I think, a lot of people who don't understand the old school way of doing things don't get it. Because it's like we managed basically this geographical region is your business to manage. You got to collect the money, you got to pay for people, you got to hire whoever you need to support you. We had to run our own micro business essentially, right? So we learned it all. Sorry, my kid's coming to jump in here. She's
Are you trying to, is there nobody else to take care of her right now?
No, she's just wants attention. You know how kids are. Time of day.
Yeah.
Kids.
Oh, okay. How old is she?
She's 3.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
son is 9, so I
Nice.
don't really have to keep an eye on him. He's in the other room playing Fortnite.
Yeah, she's
Hey,
usually
listen.
chill, but you know, it's every once in a while she comes in. I was actually in a pretty big meeting like 2 weeks ago, and she crept around, and I was like, you know, give her the stop sign, like hold on, stop, and she like creeps in slowly, and I was like, oh fuck, like this isn't gonna be good. And they're
Well,
like,
the world has
everyone stop.
changed.
They're like, who's that little girl? You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The world has changed. The world is definitely accepting
Yeah.
of it. Um, I guess, I mean, if you can make arrangements for those things not to actually be distracting, and like in regular business, not in this is a conversation
No.
we're having. I don't mind,
No.
but like, if you can do it, you do it. But I think that's what people realize, right? Like, obviously I don't have anybody else, so like, that, like if it was a business thing and you needed to at least like put her on your lap so she stay quiet, right? Like, and you do
Yeah.
it. And if they get like that, great. And if they don't, then you step away for a second. I mean, people, it's weirdly accepted these days, I think, in everywhere you go.
It was accepted years ago for full cycle guys though. Like, like guys would be like, hey, I got to go do a thing with my kids at 2:00 today. And everyone's like, okay.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. It was like,
I
wanted results, but nobody cared if you had to take a week off to go and, do something because your kid was sick. They're like, make up for it on the back end. And most guys were working in the afternoons, or they were working in the evenings when everybody's in bed anyway, when they're off.
Yeah.
So,
I think the other thing too, with like, full cycle, what that allows is, I feel like SDRs are constantly pushing net new all the time, recycling leads, more leads, and they're burning through, their total addressable market, and I don't mean burning through it like on parallel dialing or anything like that. I just mean burning through it just in general, like, and getting to the point where, like, you're never going to be able to touch those people because, they're going to come through the masses of your build. Like, for example, like what I mean by that is that people, I think, regardless of, because so many people keep changing tools and changing products and back ends and things like that, the SDR is going to lose sight of like a follow-up, let's just say a year from now. It's not going to be the same SDR.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be a follow-up that's booked a year from now, which if you're full cycle, you have that intellectual property, regardless of what's written in the notes or whatever. And it's like, is that important? Is that strong? It's a stronger call than to say, like, how many times do you get a call that says, oh, hey, CT, oh yeah, one of my colleagues spoke with you a year ago. They're no longer with us, but I'm the new rep, blah, blah, blah. And it's like you're starting again. But if I called you up year over year, you're going to know my name. We're going to have a chit chat. We're going to talk about your kid, whatever it is. And then we'll remind each other of why we connected in the first place, right? And you'll have a much warmer conversation. I think when you passing leads, it's you're starting from scratch again. And the full cycle sales rep who has a built up sort of pipeline of follow-ups, and I had tipped Sean Cease with this because we always talk about multiple touches. The more calls you can make of people that you've already spoken to once or twice before is really when you're going to book meetings and book meaningful conversations, really. So is it that?
Sorry, my kid's just crying a little bit. I'm trying to get her something to do. Yeah, it is that. But the thing is like, when I'm cold calling, what I do, honestly, I'll call people and they'll think I work with them in their company, right? Because I'm going in with I know. Hold on one sec. Sorry, man. Give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna give her a distraction.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, I could, I could always talk to my audience. I think at the end of the day, there's room for both models. There's room, and it's going to continue to grow. I think people are going to start to look more at the full cycle role or kind of model, or maybe even adopt something relatively. I've been talking about this for a while, which is the pod kind of model, which has been tried, maybe very much like 100,000 sales tools out there that people try and don't really put 100% into, and then all of a sudden they're on to the next shiny object. The pod model, I should say, was a very successful model in the finance industry. Like on the trading floor. That's how they were kind of set up. Like my brother worked inside of a pod. It was like him and a senior broker and a full-time trader and an admin and a marketing guy, and so like that's what I was thinking. Like you have this sort of closer, all around closer guy. You have me, I'm the top of funnel, let's just say. You have the demo guy, closer, and then you have the marketing guy, the marketing person who's doing all the emails and the display campaigns, or maybe that is corporate. Maybe it is corporate marketing. Maybe that's the problem with corporate marketing. The reason why the silos have been created, because you've got first of all, you got different compensation plans and you've got different goals, and so that's the misalignment there. And we've talked a lot of people blew. Even when I had Adam on the show, we discussed that. But it's just a really, I think what happens, and I'm going to ask you this when you come back. My biggest question to you is, do you think that the proliferation of so much of this enablement software that it makes people not really understand what to do next? And everybody little bit by little chirping about bring back the old school ways, the old schools with the new school technology. I think you gotta think process first. And let me give you an example. I used to when I worked at Sherwin-Williams back in the day, one of the first things that happened when I got there in 2002 was we got the Trio smartphone, and all of a sudden Sherwin-Williams decided to build their own CRM, right? And I was like, there really wasn't. I mean, Salesforce had just come out, but like they decided to build their own. Quite ironically, they're on Salesforce now, but they spent $1 billion or whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars building the software, and they rolled it out on like the shittiest platform, right? The Trio smartphone.
Trio.
And, right, which you can't see is like this little tiny thing, little screen and everything. Little buttons, like raised buttons. It was the strangest thing. And that was our field sales tool, right?
Yeah.
And of course now they probably have iPhones or iPads or whatever. But like back then there was a lot of people who were very averse. Some of the older group, even some of the younger group, they were averse to really using it, right? It was like it was like they were going from paper to that, right? And so those that didn't use it, when I was in leadership, I said, well, why not? Like where are you inputting this information? Like, how are you keeping track of all of your meetings and your work? Like, you got to be putting it somewhere. Now, I don't care where you're putting it. If you're putting it in a book or you're putting it in a day timer or whatever it was we used back then good. Then it's a process. It's a process that you have to keep organized and to keep the sales moving through whatever your process, your funnel. So if you're not going to use the tools that are being created for you, you got to have something.
You do,
right? And so I think the problem is everybody in this industry, is part of this industry, was born into this tech.
Yep.
And they just can't get away from it. And they built the tech before the process, before the discipline. What do you think of that?
100%. That's what they do. It's every.
Well, she's at least cute.
I know, but it's like every time I speak, she's like, I'm gonna go and cry and get attention. So, but and it's fine. You get a lot of attention after. I know. Hold on. She decides she's gonna pinch her finger. So here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, kids will be kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's nothing you can do. This is my daily life, and it's like I can.
You work from home?
Yeah, I mean, I travel quite a bit, so like I do a lot. I try to do as much on site as possible, just because like it's what I do. It sticks, right? And I want to see what's happening. Like I want to understand a business before we tell them how they should do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a lot of information virtually, but kind of circling back, I agree with you, man. Like, but this is the problem, right? Is you have people who haven't done it, right? They didn't do everything the long way. They didn't do the long division. So they've come up and all they know is the calculator. So they think, oh, okay, I'm just going to go get more calculators. And it's like, you can have 1 million calculators, but unless you know how the actual functioning works behind it, you're never going to be able to figure anything out. And I use saws for this. I use this example a few times where it's like, you know, a guy that knows how to cut down a tree can cut it with a saw, an axe, a chainsaw, anything, because he knows the process. But if you don't know how to cut it down, it doesn't matter what tool I give you, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to kill yourself or you're going to crash it into a house. There's so much more that goes into it than just being able to operate the tool. And we see this with a lot of new technology coming out where it's like, I'm not going to name names, but, you know, it's like these guys are starting businesses just around a tool. You know what I mean? And it's like, hey, that's really good. You know how to use this tool really well. But very few of you actually understand what's the satellite issues and processes and procedures around what you're trying to achieve actually is. You know, and this is why cold emails hasn't landed so well. And they're like, oh, well, open rates. And it's like, no, it's not open rates. It's that you're trying to do something that you don't actually know. You know, okay, I can set up a domain, I can warm it up, I can put together some text, I can do this AI research thing, you know, and I'll send it out. When in reality, all you have to do is send an email that says, hey, listen, I'd like to meet you guys to talk with you for a couple minutes about this.
Yeah.
And most people look at that and they're like, oh, okay, this is real, this is human, let's go. Right? Like, you don't need to create some big production surrounding like one little tiny task that guys used to sit there at their desk and write 100 emails or handwrite 50 faxes and send them out. You know what I mean? And they were crushing it. Those guys were doing 2-3 million without the technology. You know?
Yeah, I can't. I'm glad you brought that up because I keep saying that to other people. I'm like, there's friends of mine in other industries making fortunes of money with maybe just a CRM. If anything, I mean, I'm sure they have something, you know, because no one's going to have
email, CRM.
They're going to have some single source of truth, as they say. But like, yeah, they don't know what Sales Loft Outreach is, let alone Phone Burner, or Constant Contact, or Connect and Sell, or whatever. You know, it's like it's like it's unheard of to those guys. You know, and it makes me laugh sometimes. Even this stuff. You know, they think I'm nuts. They're like, you have a podcast? What? Anyways,
podcast is cool, but yeah, the tech, like, I'll be honest, I do love Phone Burner, especially for full cycle, just because it's like, it forces you into the targeting. You know what I mean? You're not just turn it on and go. Your mind has to be with it. Plus they're a good company, right? Like I got an email from them today and they're just with a notification. And I looked back and I was like, man, this is the only dialer company that's ever sent me anything that was actually beneficial or showed that they cared about my business, right? And not just some marketing ploy. And it's like so look back and I'm like, man, they don't, like, I don't know. I got a soft spot for Phone Burner. I like the company. I like the technology.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about tools because I want to talk a little bit about this. You know, I think and this was something in a post earlier. Comments I was having with Sean and a couple of other people, and I think it was centered around, you know, just having really skilled people on the phone. You know, if you have a combination of, let's just say, some level of verified data. I won't mention any company names. I'll just say verified data. If you have really good verified data, and I'm not talking intent, I'm talking just a phone number that's actually actually company you're looking for, right? And you've done, or even if you haven't got it up perfect, because it's never going to be perfect, but like if you've done that component and then you load that up into a parallel dialer, or let alone Phone Burner, just power dial, but a parallel dialer, whether it's Phone Burner or if it's parallel dialer, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Okay.
I think people are bitching about you parallel dial is too fast. You burn through it. You got the delay, all this kind of stuff. that's never slowed me down from hitting any bit of my quota for any of the clients that I've been using parallel dialer for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's like I've grown accustomed to using it, so I react. I know how to use it, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, like I know how to talk when it beeps and all those kinds of things. But then all the other stuff, also, it's like you have to be good and quick on your feet, and like because the call is going to come quick, and as soon as you hang up, and it's calling again, it's going to come within another minute. You don't have, and I think it's actually good because it keeps you focused. Like you said with phone burner, it keeps you focused because it doesn't leave you to go and think about the call and let me research this. God knows how many junior undisciplined reps are like wasting time between calls, right? So the parallel dialer does have a positive effect in that regard. It keeps you locked in. But at the same time, if you put that in the hands of, like I said, somebody like me, or people who are really trying to get good at that, like Jen or other folks that I know, and there's a guy, what's his name, Steve Richard or Steve Alexander or somebody that he was he had come on the cold calling competition a while back, not the Nooks one. It was just before Nooks started doing it. And it was he's amazing. I thought I was good, but I think he's probably better than me. But I just thought, like, you gotta, if you put that in the hands of somebody, like those kinds of people, or you could train the people to be really good at it, it could be extremely powerful. And it's not, you're not blowing up if you're using it responsibly. And it's kind of like the email, right? So I want to get back to that for a second, because the email, right? Like some people say like, oh, SDRs, BDRs, they shouldn't really be doing email, just making calls. Email should be marketing, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, I think the problem is the reason why products like these warmers and again, the ones that have multi-domain rotations and all that stuff. If you have 500 reps, even if those people are sending out 30 emails each, that's too many, right? So you need those. If those tools are really saving you from dropping into spam at that level, for that reason, because of your domain and the activity on your domain would flag it, and if it helps you get through, then use them. By all means, use them. But like small companies, small volume, like I send maybe 100 to 150 a day max, not even every day. And guess what? I don't get a lot of replies, if at all. I get a bunch of opens because those opens are fake. Sometimes they open it twice, then I know it's real, but still, it's not a huge amount. But what I know, the reason why I know that just sending it out, even through SalesLoft or through your Outlook, works, because it works in conjunction with the phone.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. When I call up a customer and I am using the same language, the same kind of theme, if you will, even use the same words that I used in the email, or that was used in a, let's say well, I was going to say a display campaign, like a programmatic display, like when you go to like whatever website and all of a sudden you see what you were just talking about with your wife pop up on the screen as an ad, that kind of stuff. And so and so you coupled with that, right? Like when I call somebody and they actually start listening to me, other than just the way I open and I get them comfortable, but then all of a sudden there's something going on in their head. Like I might say a few things and all of a sudden they're like, so I think I got an email on this not too long ago. And that's why they stayed on the phone for the first 90 seconds. And they don't realize it. They don't realize it, but they heard this before. They heard the same words before. How do I know that? And they're intrigued, right? And then all of a sudden they say that to me all the time. They say, did you send me an email?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to book a time right there. Like, it's just like, it's because they become so comfortable. But why were they so comfortable? Because again, it's the alignment of marketing, all the marketing stuff, the email stuff. And even though it doesn't necessarily get a reply, it's billboard marketing again.
It's eyeballs, man. I just want people to see and have a little bit of recall.
And when you call them, now you can understand quickly what the situation is. Is this a viable prospect? you know, or at the very least, I back out. It's not the right time.
Yeah.
I back out with a referral. Do you know anybody else that could benefit from this or whatever?
Or if you're full cycle, you get them for later. They inbound you after.
That's true.
Right.
Well, again, I think, you know, if you have the, let's talk a little bit about acumen though, because I think that's a broader topic. I think acumen, and I talk about this all the time, and the top of funnel allows you to understand their business. If you have a little bit of an understanding of business in general and what's important to people and how things flow in a business, then you might be able to actually have conversations with CEOs or COOs, CFOs, right? Everybody tries to go, oh, well, you know, it's a 27, 20, you know, I'm a SDR 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, and they're calling CFOs. They have no idea what a CFO does, you know?
No, and each of those groups, most of them, like, not to profile them, a lot of them have certain personalities. Like, I've done a lot of work. I do a lot on the engineering side because I got a huge background in it, understand it. Engineers have a pretty typical profile of how they communicate, you know, and it's just the way they are, right? They have to be analytical in their days. So it's like, if I'm calling engineer, like if I had to set up a brand new campaign tomorrow morning and I had to hire 10 people and get them trained, I would hire 10 really good engineers and train them how to cold call instead of hire 10 really good salespeople and teach them about engineering, right? Exactly. Because if you hit a CFO, or if you hit a CTO, or if you hit anybody that's management level up, who's at an enterprise company, for example, they've been around for a while, they've been involved in, most of these guys, especially in engineering, they have patents that they were partnered in, right? They did all kinds of new development programs, and they've done these partnerships. They understand business. They understand how things work back and forth. So you have to be able to sit in there and hang with them. And I tell people this, it's called, I call it peer positioning. And it's like, I position myself as a peer within those industries, right? So if I'm calling engineers, I'm showing up like an engineer, not like some cold caller. If I'm calling CFOs, I'm showing up like I'm a CPA, not, you know, a cold caller. And that's how, that's where a lot of people miss the mark, is this, it's not just product that's important. It's about, and it's not about personalization. It's about relevance, but not just relevance to that company, relevance to what those people do and see in a day-to-day, and how those different instruments they're interacting with operate. Most people don't know that. Most people just don't know it, you know, and they don't want to go and learn that part because it's not easy. It's hard.
That's funny. I work with, I'm working on a campaign right now where I'm calling into like businesses that run field service engineers and field service technicians. And what's interesting is that I kept running into a little bit of people's mix of people's titles, where I'm trying to reach the service guy, right? And I got a name, and I talked to them, and I find out they're actually on the sales side. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I thought I had you at as a service side. He goes, yeah, you know, I was a technician and I was an engineer, and then I ran, you know, I was a service manager, but you know, now I'm more on the sales side. And I said, well, that makes sense, right? Because, you know, and it's weird because like guys like that, or people like that, and people in non-sales roles always feel like they can't be I can't sales ill, you know, or I can't be a salesperson. I don't have the gift of gab like this guy has. That's not what you need, dude. You need an understanding of the customer, and you're out with the customer every day. Who understands them better than you? You know, and so like it makes you the best salesman, and they just need, sometimes those guys, those kinds of people just need a little bit of a push, you know, a little bit of a like they need like succession planning in a company, right? More of that. Hey, you know, I'm sure leaders in those companies hopefully are identifying maybe some of those, you know, infield guys to potentially move over to the sales side, you know, because it just makes sense. You know, they're not going to be the ones chatting them away. Anything they say is going to be really very, you know, technical and specific if necessary. And then they can't be anything else, right? Other than that, they could be just ask questions. You know, that's what I think sometimes, though, that I love about the immaturity of the top of funnel sales reps, because when you don't know a lot, you don't have anything to say.
Yep.
Which is actually a good thing in some cases. And in that model, the SDR AE model, right?
Yep.
Like they don't need to get in the weeds, right? They're going to get the AE or the sales engineer to do that, right? And so, the more that they could just ask one or two questions, engage interest, and then get out, book a meeting and get out. That's not a bad. I mean, it's a wonderful
one thing, and I have data on this. Those people, like the percentage of closed won is a lot smaller than the SDRs that actually know what they're talking about. Because the problem is like, it's like you go you go and walk into a store and you're like, hey, I want to see this. And the person talks to you, says, okay, I'll go and get some. What do you want to see? You want to see this? Okay, cool. This is what we do. Hold on. Let me go get somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. And then you go get somebody else and you're like, okay, cool. I'm looking for some shoes, blah, blah, blah. Right. Then they go get somebody else. Oh yeah, here's the shoe. And it's like that, like getting into this buyer journey talk that's happening. It's like the whole model of having these multiple touch points from multiple different people, right? At different times, they lose connection. For one, this is part of why churn's high, because people don't have a personal relationship with the companies. They're emotionally detached, right? And if I have somebody who loves me, great. If I have somebody who hates me, that's great too, because they're still emotional about me. I can convert them. But most clients now are indifferent because there's no personalized business process anymore. They're trying to ram them through this system. And it's like, oh, I went to McDonald's for the smiles. Well, they don't smile anymore. So now I'll just go somewhere else because it's just a burger. You know what I mean? Like, but that's what's happening. And people think, oh, that's not real. And it's like, no, there's a lot of data out there that shows that the personalization is real and the relationship actually starts to matter at some stage. The SDR model, if you have a relationship-based sale where you're going to sell a $4 million engineering contract, or you have some capital equipment that needs to go, where it's like these people are going to spend hours and hours and hours on the phones with you, you need to have that single source of truth from the company, right? You got to have that one person who can steer the ship and be that point of contact and hold that relationship. So when the customer's pissed off, they feel comfortable dumping on you. They feel comfortable saying, hey, you sold me this thing. You gave me this problem, right? I need you to fix it. And you say, yeah, no problem. The trust is there. You're like, you know what? Not me. Let me put you through to the next person. Next person picks up. Hey, how's it going? Hold on. Let me pull some information here. Right?
Yeah. Starting from scratch.
There's a corporate disconnect there, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Jeff Swan mentioned, it's not about knowing or not knowing. It's about being curious and asking great questions. And this could be from inexperience, but it could also be because of lots of experience. And yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I said, well, the inexperienced ones who they may only be able to ask questions. Hopefully they're being given the most educated questions to ask, but it's not actually about, see, what's interesting about the acumen piece is, and the maturity piece is being able to dig deeper into it, right? And not just asking a question and getting an answer, jotting it down, moving to the next question, right? It's really understanding what was the answer that was given, right? Yeah. And I don't go, when I say I go deep, I don't mean get in the weeds and top of funnel. I mean, like, what do you mean by that? Like, a lot of people take a lot of what they say for granted. And what happens is, that's again another huge issue with the handoff, right? Yeah. Like you're saying, like, oh, all of a sudden, it's like you walk into the massage parlor, the masseuse who you think you're going to have walks you to the room. They tell you to lay down. They're sharing some stories with you. And then, you take your clothes off, you're laying down, you can't see nothing. All of a sudden the door slams and another guy's in there. Hey, how you doing? It's like, you're like, I just got comfortable. That's scary, right? That post, by the way, didn't go anywhere. I actually wrote it just like that. I think it didn't like the fact that I started off with you're walking to a massage parlor. But
I get a better one you can use. So like healthcare is obviously free in Canada. It's not free. We pay dearly for it. Trust me. But what happens is, so I'm having another kid, and we go.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. My wife goes and oh, here's your doctor. This is who's going to be there and take care of you. You see them twice, and then you go to a nurse, you go to somebody else. Finally, the day comes where a baby's coming out. Some stranger shows up and delivers it.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and we had this conversation like over the last week with a number of people who are like, yeah, the process is kind of weird. So
the best way to handle that? You know what the best way to handle that is?
Just don't go.
No, you gotta go. And schedule a C-section, then you know exactly who's going to be there, right? They have to be there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Canada is like you don't know who's showing up, right? And it's like I've done it before where, and there's some good people out there. There's some good smooth talkers, and I've had conversations with guys that were trying to set up a meeting, and it's like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, and then I go into the meeting, nobody shows up, they're 5 minutes late. The person who does show up is disorganized. They don't have any more knowledge than how to basically run this one little, consistent demo. You start asking them questions. Oh, that's a great question. Why do you ask that? Well, because of this. Oh, okay. Are you going to answer my question? They don't know how. They don't. There's a real lack of acumen and maturity in sales and specifically in tech and SaaS. Like there really is. Like, and I mean, I'm not trying to call anybody out or call any companies out. There's some that do it really well. There's some that don't, but it's like, well, there's so many holes in the sales process with the SDR model, the SDR to AE to CSM to sales engineer to whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Where nobody's seeing that entire picture and nobody understands it fully, and the clients pick up on this, right? And it's like, if you get into it where you have a full cycle person who has the acumen, not just the acumen to make the cold call, to send the email, to do the demo, right? They've got the acumen to understand how to carry that prospect through the process. Their close rates are much higher, right? Yeah. And it's because there's a lot more trust there. And when you've got a higher trust rate, plus somebody who's basically nurturing that relationship as they're trying to sell, right? You're limiting competition, because what'll happen now, especially with lots of technologies, you have these digital scouting teams, right? So you got this team inside, it's got 8 or 9 people, and you bring in the SDR calls 4 of them, gets a meeting with 2 of them, right? They show up. Well, you got the guy from the accounting department, you got the guy from the engineering department. These guys speak different languages. These guys don't give a shit about what the other person cares about. The reason they're on this buying committee is so they can add a user input, they can add an administrative input, and it all depends which area they're coming from. Most people lack the acumen in sales today to be able to talk to every single one of those, buyer personas, and have that go through. But if you've got a single source where it's like, hey, I'm talking to you today, I'm talking to Jeff Swan tomorrow, I can now start to build that story to increase that deal progression speed and velocity. Absolutely. I know some people be like, you can't increase velocity of a deal. Yeah, you can.
Well,
I'm going to speed that up and become a higher probability choice for them when they decide to buy it.
I will give merit to the person who would say you can't speed it up. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. It depends on the industry really that you're working in, because like for example, we have a bus company. We sell handicap buses and vans and non-emergency medical transport type vehicles, and we deal with school systems and ODOT, which is like Ohio Department of Transportation, and you can't rush it. What we've learned to be able to do is, with these people is actually, and this is interesting because I don't know if it can be done. And maybe there's an area within tech sales that it's applicable, but what we do there is, they want to put a bid out, or they want to put they want to get a grant. Right. And they want to get a grant for money, and they got to figure out how much money do they need, right? They have their own money. There's a regular money that the business makes, and then there's this federal grants and city grants and all that stuff. And so they apply for these grants, but they have to figure out what the buses event's going to cost them first. So they could just Google it. They could just look, haphazardly. They could be calling somebody they've bought from before, which is typically what they do. And then there comes, say us on the sales side, who we're saying, hey, are you looking at, say getting new vehicles next year? a lot of the formations, the way you build it out, have changed. Would you be open to having us doing a consultation with you guys and like kind of helping you build out the right bus that you need for your under your budget that you're applying for? And so you get in ahead, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And you become the spec.
You build a spec. Yeah, you get
build the
spec'd
spec.
in.
You get spec'd in. Now, because it's a municipality or it's government, it has to be fair, right? So they probably, if it is an RFP, they will RFP to other vendors. But you're gonna like, you have the relationship now, right? And so
you need the relationship, because what they do when the bids come in, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but this does happen in a lot of tender packages, is they call the guy they know and they say 90 grand, and the guy goes, okay, right? Yeah. Then they do a post-tender addendum. Right. And then boom, boom, boom. So and there's ways around that, but that's usually what happens. And if you look at some of like the bid and spec world, if you look at design build projects, there's usually a proponent group. So they pre-decide who they're going to use before that, and then the different proponents decide they're going to go in at it. And this is It's a dirty process, but I mean, it's you can't an SDR AE model isn't going to solve. You're not getting in there. Like you got to have somebody dedicated to the RFPs and government contracts and things like that, because they take longer, and they actually. What's sad about those roles, like we're struggling with this a little bit. Like we have one guy on the team that has a lot of his business comes from there, and the margins there are much less because we had to get in on a certain level in order to compete. And so we had to change the pay structure there, because we couldn't just pay out a straight commission. We're paying like here's a fee for you sell this bus, you just get 2,500, as opposed to what could have been 10% or 20%. Yeah.
And so it's a different model, and I've worked a lot on bids and specs. I worked in the architectural engineering space in New York City for 15 years, and but it was funny when I was with Sherwin-Williams, the specs, right? There would be a spec, and there would be a product that the spec was written around, but then they would have approved alternates, right? And they were, sadly, it was all alphabetical. The listing on the page, like in the spec, would be alphabetical, and so we were Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah, you're at the bottom.
Yeah. There's a product called Benjamin Moore, which is B.
Yeah, you're getting
the first. So there's Amaron, Benjamin Moore, then there was a C, then there was Duron, and then Sherwin-Williams bought Duron, but that didn't really matter, right? Like, so we were like on the second page, and like people would say to me, like I'd go into offices and architects and stuff, and they're like, "You're not on the spec," and I'm like, "Oh, we are on the spec. We're just on like the third page list of alternates." So eventually I realized I had to be the spec, and in paint business for the designers, it was all about the color, right? So I had to put the colors in and I would do like parties and things with these designers. It was like, and then I realized, what I got to do? One of the smartest moves I made in my business. I realized that every person, this kind of changed the trajectory of Sherwin-Williams in New York, and they don't realize it, but I hired, or I helped to hire, obviously she didn't work for me, we worked together, but I hired a girl right out of Parsons School of Design, and her first task, I said to her, I said, "Hey, we met, we became really good friends, and I said, I need you to make a list of all the girls that just graduated with you that are working in firms in the city right now that are designers at firms, and we're gonna go see all of those people, right?
See all of them,
because they didn't want me. I was this like 40-year-old, or I was 40 at the time. I guess I was a lot younger, but and so I realized like I need to find somebody who's their contemporary, right? 23-year-old, ex-design student. So. It's like you gotta, when you get in deep, as full cycle could be, is when you really become much more seen as the expert. Like you kind of were dancing around a little bit.
Well, I mean, that's who they trust, right? So if you don't have an expert on
trusted advisor, right? Is the word trusted advisor?
Trusted advisor. I mean, whatever they call it. I mean, most of the best people out there don't have titles. right? Like they'll never drop a title. They call up, hey, how's it going? This is so-and-so, this is what I want to do, right? They show up and then they just get it done. They lay it out. And I mean, I've got in the spec world too. I mean, it's, one thing we did in a lot of cases is we would actually build the spec for them.
Yeah.
So we'd be like, here's your little insert, put this into your package. And then they'd be like, engineer or architect say, yeah, I don't have to do that. Put it in. Yeah. Sales guy calls them, tries to bust the spec. Oh, what about this? Right. And it's like, okay, fair enough. It all depended on how good of a relationship they had compared to your relationship with them, as well as can they meet those minimum design requirements, which most competitors out in the market can't. Right. And that's where your next level of work comes in, because, we get to these large engineering packages, like multi-million-dollar packages, and it would be, all right, here's what everybody's after and we want it too. So let's get the spec in first. We'd get the spec, but we'd go spec all this other upstream, downstream equipment and all these add-ins and throw-ins that are directly related to this, whether it's some like
that they couldn't match, that they really couldn't match. Well, I think there's like,
well, their package will work, but it won't work with this thing and this other thing. So you'll have to change those two. The engineer goes, too much work. I'm not approving it, right? So there's ways to do stuff.
You make it called single source. You make it single source. That's how I used to get over in the government, being able to. They only had approved vendors for certain things, right? And if you were going to get in, you had to be small, disabled, veteran-owned business, or minority-owned business, or something like that. And the way I would bypass that would be proving single source.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, we're the only ones that have this. If it's your spec and we're the only ones that have it. But a lot of times, like architects and designers, they don't want to write an exclusive spec, right? Like they don't want to, they want to keep it competitive. Some have to, like New York City School Construction Authority, one of the most difficult agencies to work with in the world. Greatest people if you get a chance to get into their office and like do a lunch and learn, but just so much red tape. And for years, we, like I said, we were like on the third page of the spec, and I had so much trouble just trying to like get my nose in there. And finally it was like some advisor to them had spec'd something that we were it was a kind of a minor thing, but and that's how we were able to get around everything else, like beat everybody else, because some other advisor advised them to use us because of their experience with it. And it's like, again, part of that the scenario, but people buy from people they trust. I mean, that's the bottom line. Hey, before we're getting late into the hour, but I think this has been a tremendous conversation despite some interruptions. No, that's all right. But I do want to get into, you do a lot of traveling. You're really, obviously all the things that we talked about, just hearing you out, it's great. I'm curious though, like, you're a busy guy, you got a newborn coming, you got this, what gets you over the hump of the week? Like, how did you get to today? Like, did you accomplish more than 50% of what you needed to accomplish this week by today? Like, that's what I hear a lot from people. They say, oh, I try to get all my stuff done by Wednesday so I can cruise into Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I don't plan my days. Like I'm a more long-term planner. So I don't want to get caught up. Like that's my goal, is not to get caught up. Because the second I get caught up, it's like most people, what do? Kick your feet up, you relax, chuck on the tunes. You know what I mean? You slow down, and it's like it happens to me quite often where I'll slow down Thursday afternoon, and then something pops up for Friday morning, or something does this, and I got to scramble to try and work it out. So I'm more of a long-term planner. Like I'm always looking down the road. So I'm setting up what I can, but what I really paid a lot of attention to over the last year, especially, was my estimations of time and how inaccurate they are. I'll do this thing. This will be 2 days.
Guilty
6
as
days
charged.
Later, right?
Guilty as charged, man.
Yeah.
Maybe I should make it a twofold thing. Like, tell me what your biggest fault is.
Oh gosh.
Who's your biggest enemy? I'm my own worst enemy.
Yeah, it's understanding the time, right? And then having those moments for yourself. So I got like this sword and stuff. I got a martial arts background, a lot of physical fitness. So I do like these small little fitness breaks. So I've got this like it's a boxing ball, but it's for focus. And you can set it up and put it on your head in 5 seconds and go. So that's like,
is that the thing where it's over your head and it's like you can go like this and it moves? Oh yeah, I think I've seen something like that.
It's like a ball. It's like a ball on an elastic, basically. And your goal is to focus it. So, and it works. Like for me, it's like because I completely drown everything out because I want to get that ball, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things I do. Keep fit, eat healthy, try to get sleep. Usually, it doesn't happen. So
sleep is overrated. They say, right?
They say that. Yeah, they say it until like Saturday comes around and you're just dead.
Well, I don't know exactly how old you are, but I'll tell you what has gone. What's changed? Yeah. Well, what's changed for me a little bit, I think, is that, when I was in my 20s, 30s, if you will, and I was really like, I didn't have a kid, I was really working hard in my career, just me and my wife. And, it was like I was quote unquote grinding all day and night. It really didn't matter. It was just, it didn't, what changed, I could be up, I could start a project. I could like sit down at 10 o'clock at night and work until before to 12:30, 1, no problem. Right now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't staring at necessarily screens during those years. It was more books and TV, like stuff I work, spreadsheets or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
But it's just like I could do it late night. Like I almost would do it late night. Like there were times at college, I remember, like, and you probably experienced it. Like I'd have a paper due.
Yeah.
I sometimes didn't like start the paper. I would go out to like Thursday night nickel beers. And then I would drink till like midnight, like 11. I'd say, 11 o'clock. And then I get home and I'd start working on a thing at 12, and I would cruise all night until I had to hand it in at 9 in the morning. Right?
Yeah.
Things like that. Obviously you don't do that now, but even in my late 20s, even when I was partying and stuff like that, like it didn't like I could stay up late. Like I was still alive. Now, man, after a day of conversations and work and TV, screens in front of me, I literally go to sleep at 9 o'clock sometimes, 9:30. My kid goes to bed at 9:30, so like I might go to bed 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'll stop doing what I'm doing here, like even as hardly as I'm grinding, until 9. I can't past 9 o'clock. I just it doesn't. It's not good work. It's like anymore. It used to be really good work. I used to be able to like really do well late night, quiet, but now it's like I can't get, like I start to fall asleep basically at like 10 o'clock. I just get tired. And when I'm really tired, I just know, but like today, right? This is why I call it the hump, because today is the day where like I got up early today. I started grinding in the morning. I know I was doing this. I'll probably sit a little bit for Jesse's show, and I'll do some work until probably 11 o'clock. But by 11 o'clock, I'm done. That's tonight. That's Wednesday. That's what gets me through the week. It rounds out my week, because I'll go to sleep at 9:30, 10 o'clock tomorrow. Friday, sometimes Friday night I'm sleeping at like 8:30. Because then Saturday I'm like, I'm alive on Saturday. I get up and I'm like, my kid wants to do something and stuff. Whatever.
My kids do the karate thing. So that's just you got to learn to live on very little sleep, and
I do, but I actually been managing. Like if I go to sleep at 9:30, 10 o'clock, it seems early. It does, I know, but like I'm up at 6.
Yeah,
so it's only 8 hours, but 8 hours. Wow, I remember getting 5 was good. 5, 6, 4 or 5 maybe.
Well, you used to go out, like you used to get drunk, go out to the bar till like 2, 3 in the morning, and then go crush like a Denny's or a Humpty's or whatever, and then just get changed and go to work. you know,
That's
like
true. We did those. We
used
did
to be
those.
normal. You know, you got the wristband on still, and you know, stamps, and it just, you know, I mean,
Absolutely.
would
Those are
I
good
want
times.
to do it? I think that's part of the maturity, right? Is like I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to do that because I'm more interested in my performance at work now than I am in
Yeah.
out partying. You know, so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'll shut her down at 11 and you know, whatever. But yeah, I don't know, that hump for me, like I've honestly the last years felt like just one big week. So
I
I'm
feel you. Well, when you're building, that's, you know, when you build into something, it takes everything you got, and it's misunderstood. It's actually, some people think, that's why it's funny. We were interviewing some folks, and there was one gentleman that came on. He was quite young,
yeah.
23,
Mm-hmm.
and a good guy. Probably, he got connected to some very high level salespeople, sales professionals, or business professionals, if you will. He was exposed to the best of technology from minute one. Um, and, you know, he definitely came with a bit of an ego and talked about it. And I knew where he came from, but he was asking me, he's like, I'm thinking I should go out on my own.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, good luck, you know, like I get it. But, you know, my thing with him, and this is kind of goes across a few other folks that are come out with stuff. It's like, you know, you haven't failed at anything.
Yeah.
And what happens if you do? You know, I say that's okay though if you do, because you're only 23 years old. So if
Yeah.
you go out on your own and it fails within the next year or so, so what? Then you go back to work with somebody else, get
Keep
some more
plugging away.
experience, more experience, and then you try it again. That's what I told him. And I'm like, I gave him kudos for wanting to do it now or early. I just think like, I didn't give him this piece of advice, but this is something I was thinking about when I was 22 years old, straight out of college. I started working for Prudential Life Insurance Company, selling life insurance to 40-year-old guys like you and me, 50-year-old guys. And I think my biggest challenge back then was I didn't have any insurance myself. I didn't own a car. I didn't own a house. I didn't understand taxes. I was just coming out into the world. And here I am sitting down at dinner or after dinner time with families and trying to understand, what do you know about family? You don't even got hair on your face. I felt like that they were looking at me dressed in my nice suit, my slick back hair that I had then. And like, I thought to myself, wow, you know, even though I'm trained and I know more about why they are underinsured than they do, they're not going to believe me. It was very difficult. Most of my sales came when I partnered with another person who was a little bit more experienced than me, but it was very difficult, you know, and I think that's, you know, it doesn't matter sometimes what you know, it's how people perceive you. Right. And maybe that's always a challenge too. You hear the immaturity come across the phone, you know, you hear the common and say telemarketing type of sounds that are coming through the phone. And that's the other thing too. Like I say this today, I'll leave you with this. I have been promoting the removal of your company name from your opener. There are 1 million SDRs, probably more, at every minute of the day. Not right now, it's six maybe on the West Coast, but there's 1 million people every day picking up the phone, calling people, and the first thing they're saying is, hi, you know, this is CT Falk from Skrillex.
Yep.
How's it going? And then they may say, how's it going today? Or maybe they say, right. And you know, all these people were commenting on Oliver Johnson's post yesterday. I was tagged in that said, oh, I can't say how you doing. And I said to them, I go, you can. And you say, oh, well, I always get a sigh, or I get a this. And I said, you know why? I go, you know why you get that sigh? It's because it's your company calling, not you.
Exactly.
And that's where the sigh is coming from. Because a company would not ask you, how are you? a company is trying to sell you something.
Yep.
But Mark or CT might be curious to know how you are. So if you want to use how you are, how's it going, or how you doing, then drop the company name, and I guarantee you they'll answer you.
Yep, I agree.
That's the problem. That's the little word in there. If you remove that and you say, "Hey, CT, it's Mark Mack. How's it going?" You'll probably say, "Oh, it's going great, Mark. How's it going with you?"
Yeah.
And but if I say, "Hey, CT, this is Mark from Carrot. How's it going?" You'd be like, "Carrot? What's that?
What the hell is that?" Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the problem.
I'm with you on that. And then if I got a call, hey, how's it going? People go,
or just that.
Good. Who's this? Like, oh, dude, this is CT. How's it? Sorry to catch you off guard, man. I don't think you and I had a chance to chat yet. Listen,
it's you're human. You're human.
Yeah, you're human, but it's like the other part. Like I think where a lot of SDRs, they like if you want something, you ask, right? And it's like you need to ask fast, ask early. Like go in for that ask, like immediately. It's like even with emails, like I've seen a lot of cool, very good, well-written emails, but it's like the ask is buried somewhere. You know what I mean? And it's like you get it. I get it with a lot of cold calls I get too, where it's like, hey, how's it going? This is so-and-so with so-and-so. This is what we're doing and blah, blah, blah. And I understand your company's this and software that and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, what do you want from me? Right? Like, tell me right away what you want from me. And I think people don't know how to frame that ask into a way that makes people comfortable to say, you know what, I'll entertain it for 5 minutes and then we'll talk, and then we'll see if we'll talk later. So, I mean, I've been using the same cold call stream for like 20 years, not 20, probably about 8 years, 9 years. And honestly, it's been the highest performer I've seen. People I've given it to use it. It's their highest performer also. And there's a lot of guys now. Someone sent me a YouTube video and was like, "Hey man, did you tell this guy your opener?" And I was like, "No, who the hell is this guy?" And he's like made this whole video on it. And I'm like, nothing's new under the sun. Nothing's new under the sun, right? So it's
well, that's the other thing too, right? I mean, I think a lot of people, this is where some of the operations break down in some of these companies is, people are looking for other things. They're constantly like, "Oh, this isn't working. That's not working." If you just work it, maybe you can make it work. But like, if it's like they're constantly being bombarded with information, and they're it's like I always say, like somebody who brags about how many meetings they set this month and how much of a show rate it is, and I ask, "Oh, what are you selling?" Right? And they're like, "Oh, they're selling some kind of sales tool that will increase the amount of meetings they have, or increase." Who doesn't want that? How is it? You could call me up and get me to sit down for a demo for that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying they're not doing good work. I just think it's there's just so much of that, and it just makes people. It's making people not like really work out the kinks in the tools that they currently have. Somebody always asks me, like, what's the best dialer? What's this? What's that? You know what? I've actually used them all, almost all of them, right? In production in some cases. Orem, Phone Burner, Monster Connect, Sales Intel, Zoom Info, all these things, right? And guess what? I won't say to you in any way, shape, or form that this one could. I'd say this worked for me better than that one. This one worked for me. This one didn't really work for me for whatever reason. But guess what? They actually all worked for me, because guess what? They were given to me, and I needed to be successful, and I'll make it be successful. Yeah, you make it work, because it's not the tool. It goes back to that. It's the process. It's the discipline behind it. So, hey man, listen, this was a great conversation. We went over a little bit, but I always love doing that, almost by a half hour. But
sorry
thank
about
you
the
very
interruptions,
much,
everybody. I mean,
well, maybe that's why we kind of went over that.
I thought it was going to be. I thought my situation would be under control today, but it's.
No, man. Listen, I really enjoyed talking to you. In fact, I would love to do it again, not maybe live, but love to dig in more with you about what you're doing, your company, and where you're going. And I would love to do that. But thanks for showing up. And where can my audience see you, reach you, hear you, find you, connect with you?
Yeah, just get me on LinkedIn, CT Falk, pretty easy. Only one on there. We also got a website, skrillo.co. We got a little bit of work going on it right now. And my phone number is everywhere. So, someone wants to text me, cold call me, go nuts. 587-435-3255. Just call me.
I wish people would call me. I mean, when I say these things, I do get the call, but like I wish I would actually get a cold call, and when I do, sometimes it's not good. It's usually something really bad. But I wish people like that are good would call me and just want to chat. No, it's like, you know, by putting my number out there, you know what's happened to me? I get a lot of just hangups.
Yeah.
Like nobody's there. Constantly. There. I feel like I've been punked, like constantly just the same 239 number, same solicitation. And I know that there's some companies out there that are doing verification, right?
They're trying to, so yeah.
I think that's possibly what it is. Cause like I'll you know, there's just nobody there. I'm like, hello. And then I feel like I'm maybe on somebody's parallel dialer and I'm the call getting dropped, you know, cause the other one's picking up. But you know what's really funny? I get a call the other day and there was a huge delay and then I hear a beep and then the guy comes on. He had an accent. I really didn't understand what he said, unfortunately. But we talked for a minute and the first thing out of my mouth was, wow, that was a long delay before the beep. What tool are you using?
Yeah.
He did not answer. He just tried to go into what he had on his script. Yeah. Right. This is the second time I tried it and I heard something like that. They never reply. I don't think they know, but even if they do, they for some reason they just go right into their script, right? And it's like, you know, like I know it's not the tools that I use because the delay isn't that bad on the tools I use. But like it was amazing. And I have one quick question for you.
Yeah, let's go.
Does CT stand for anything?
Yeah, just people have been calling me that forever. So my name's Chris.
Christopher Thomas.
Well, you know how many Chris's are in the world? Yeah. Like 400,000 probably, like right now in America. So it's hard.
Are you Chris?
Yeah, I'm a Chris.
What's your middle name? Thomas?
No, Tyler.
Oh, so Christopher Tyler.
Yeah.
Oh.
CT.
So CT's cool.
Yeah.
And what'd you think of the promo? I thought that looked awesome. That was the best one I've ever made. I keep evolving it every week. Every week I keep evolving it. I think it has a lot to do with whatever picture that I pick, and then I superimpose it on the back, and then I put the print on. I use a transparency, and I put the print on the front. And I thought it was cool. I was like, if anybody just wants to join just because they thought that was cool, I was like,
no, it's cool, man. Yeah, it's we'll have to get together again and shoot the breeze. We'll do it. All, and I think we got a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, listen, good night, everybody. Happy hump day and peace out. Next week, I think, actually in 2 weeks, I've got Eric Iannello coming on. I got a couple of other interesting guests coming on. I think I got Shane Mai coming on as well. So stay tuned for all of that. And thanks for listening. And if you guys are watching on the replay, thanks for watching the replay. Peace.